Good day, good day, good day. Hello, y'all. Get in here, friends. We are live with my sister friends in real life and all things entrepreneurship. Katia Joseph of K4 Creative. We're just gonna, get into it today. We're gonna have some candid conversation around this life of risk taking and entrepreneurship and what that looks like, what it looks like to be aligned and what it looks like to arrive and to journey, right? Because we're still journeying. So let's just get into a quick video about who you are and what K4 Creative is.
Let's do it.
All right.
K4 Creative Inc. Creativity, Catalyst, Kumba, Karma. We have accepted our responsibility to serve our community. The artwork represents us. We're adding ourselves back to the tapestry that was built with our blood, sweat, and tears. Through dance and choreography, we tell our stories. It allows us to heal, to release, and to share.
But for all of us who have been in that moment in time where blue lights come on behind you and the hairs on the back of your neck stand up because you don't know what the interaction is, how it's going, what it's going to result in.
We educate and supply resources that empower and protect Black and Brown communities nationwide. We start with ourselves because when we are better, our families are better, our communities, our nation, our world. We are K4 Creative Inc.
Wow. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean, so share with us, right? So obviously this is your lifestyle. This is your passion project. This is all that you are, in your day-to-day journey, professionally and personally. So let's talk a little bit about, abandoning this traditional 9 to 5 lifestyle that we, have all kind of like grew up on, that model, how we've just sort of abandoned that. Because I too, am in the same boat. And now we are what I like to call in a lifestyle of 9 to thrive, which is a constant journey in entrepreneurship. Tell me a little bit about the story. Like, how did you arrive here? And like, how did you pick this? Like, how did you get here?
I blinked.
Tell the truth. That's right.
First of all, I love the phrase 9 to thrive because that's exactly what this is. And the hours don't stop at 5. I'm a woman of faith and I'm grateful for unctions and inclinations and sensitivity and all honesty, because had you told me in high school, in college, that this was where I would be, I probably would have laughed. I did the traditional route. Like you said, I went to college, I went to Howard, I was a psych major.
Ain't you?
No, get me started. Get me hype. I danced while I was at Howard, but it wasn't my major. I had a traditional job in New York that I knew I was coming back to. They had already asked about me when I was graduating. Not in psychology. It was at a sports and entertainment complex. I was working at a daycare and gymnastics. I had told myself, it's not what God says, what I told myself, that I was going to be there for 2 years. I would work full time. My first year, I would work and save my money and I would move out. I told myself that I would start a master's program after 2 years of taking it easy for a little bit and working.
Mm-hmm. And this is what really happened. Tell us what really happened.
So I ended up at that job for 3 years. I started a dance program. You can't run away from your passions, right? So because I started the program, I was like, I'm not just going to abandon it, right? So I stayed there for a 3rd year. Honestly, my eyes are open in a different way. I had a financial advisor who I absolutely loved. I remember telling him, I was like, I miss painting. I want to paint. And he was like, so paint. And literally, he was like, what's up, right? So I was like, okay. And I started taking investment classes as well. And I got the unction. There are a lot of things I felt like God put on my heart when I was in college. It sounds pretty. It wasn't just this pretty, but in the moment, I remember feeling like, this ain't it. This ain't it. I gotta go. I gotta go. I remember praying about it. It was, I want to say, February of 2016. I went into my boss's office and I was like, I think I'm done. I'm going to finish out like this year.
I could imagine you saying it just like that. I think I'm done.
I think it's been real. It's been a great run. And it's funny. She knew it when I walked into her office. She literally was like, are you leaving? You know, like,
yeah, like she felt it.
Yeah. And there was no plan. It wasn't like I was like, boom, let me set myself up for the next 5 months. And by the time I'm out, I'm going to have this. No, I jumped ship. I went on vacation. I went to my cousin's wedding for a week in Jamaica. Literally the day after I quit, I came back and was like, huh, what now? Yeah. So that literally is how the journey started. I had been painting on my own, but I had never sold my paintings before. I had been teaching dance classes, but I had never done it on my own, like private lessons or anything like that yet. I had been learning investments for months, but it wasn't anything that I had officially put my money into yet. So everything was the first time. And I ran through my savings account really fast.
But you had a savings, which, you know, as a young person, I think, you know, that's always the thing. Like sometimes you have a savings and sometimes you don't. So you did have a savings. So
I did. And it's funny because this is that moment where you realize how uncomfortable comfortable is. Before this moment, all of my bills are on auto pay and I was getting my nails done probably, you know, at least once or 2 times a month. And it wasn't like I was living, like I literally, in those first 3 years of me being back at home, you know, New York is so expensive. So I got home like, yeah, I'm going to go, I'm going to save my money, I'm going to move out. And then I was like, New York prices. I literally applied for affordable housing and was denied because I made too little. Didn't know that could happen, real life. So I was doing that in my first 3 years because I was comfortable. I had steady income. I was traveling and all that. And so that was comfortable for me, except I realized how uncomfortable it is because things change so fast. I ran through my savings account. This was the first time where I had to deal with things like late payments. I remember I was terrified. Like I went through running through my savings, borrowing money for a while, and then being like, you just got to face it. Like you just got to deal with where you are. And I will never forget that first time I was like, my payment is late. Like, what do I do now?
The anxiety of that.
First time it happened, I was like, oh, I lived. Oh God, we out. Like, it's cool, right? Hey, you're behind. I was like, you're right. When you're gonna pay? I was like, I don't know.
Right. At what point did you decide what your income stream was going to be?
So I think honestly it happened in multiple moments. When the reality was when my bank accounts, right, weren't growing. Okay, well, I need to bring additional money in, right? So there's that point where it's like, okay, what makes sense? And there's no blueprint in the sense, right? Like I'm an artist. I sell my artwork, my paintings. I did not go to Juilliard. I did not go to any level of fine art school. I took one painting class in high school. It was that moment, right, where you realize like, okay, you keep taking money out of your bank account, but no money's going back into the account. So what are we gonna do here? And investment is a much longer process than I realized, right?
Yeah.
That was probably the first moment. Like before I had sold anything, it was like, you keep taking money out. You want to paint, you have to buy supplies, you have to do all these different kind of things because now you want to do it in different capacity. And then, like I said, then there's that moment where the bills are due and you ain't got it. And you're like, oh no, I really need to get money coming in. And I had created an Instagram page way before that. I had never used it, posted really. And I was like, well, I gotta start getting my stuff out. And I sold my first painting on Instagram. I literally was just posting, like it was random. I know right now we're in a place of like content creation and organize and all that kind of stuff. There was none of that. I randomly would just post and somebody comment and be like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Or, you know, is this for sale? And I'd be like, actually, yeah, private message or here's my number. It was messy. All right, yeah, how much? I was guessing prices and I was like, okay, this is cute, but you know, selling one painting or two every once in a while is not enough.
It's not going to sustain you.
So what other ways? And I had to brainstorm and get creative. And then I saw people posting about events. So in that moment is when I started seeing like vending events and, you know, like pop-ups. And I was like, all right, well, let's go for it. And I made up numbers in my mind. And for a long time, I was like, every time I do an event, I'm going to have 40 pieces to sell.
That's a huge goal.
It was, I don't
because you have to actually produce those 40 pieces and each of them are customized. They're not mass produced.
Nope. Everything was by hand, y'all. Literally, I went to work. Like it was sleepless nights. It was going crazy. It'd be like 2 days left and you only have 30 pieces. Let's go. You know, like And then I use Instagram, and I would text everybody and be like, hey, I'm doing this event. Meet me here. It's my first time. It's my second time, that kind of thing. That's how I started selling.
Can we stay right there for a second? Because I remember showing up to your first showcase, and I remember at that time it was only paintings. And then by the next time I saw prints and pillows, and at some point you learned, in entrepreneurship how to scale, right?
Yes.
And so you figured out how to work smarter and not harder, right?
There's no way I would have been able to keep that up. Like, let's be fully transparent. And sometimes people think like, oh, well, you love it. It's your passion. And I will be dead painting, 37 paintings a day. Like, in full transparency, out of fear, I was doing 1 to 2 events, maybe a month at the beginning, because at that point in my mind, I was like, I need 40 pieces. I can't handle more than that at a time. And I think also was because I was like, I need to sell a lot, right, in order to make money at that. I'm selling pieces that are like this big for $10. Like, you got to have a lot of those if that's what you're doing. I broke out of that. I was like, all right, well, you can't always do. I had pieces I could bring to the next shows. And then it hit, like, what happens when you're tired? What happens when you don't finish the paintings? And thankfully, people have been a large part of the epiphanies and revelations. And God has spoken to me through people who have asked, like, oh, well, do you have it this way, or do you have a poster? And all of a sudden it was like, okay, let's duplicate myself. And that's how I started creating products, posters, prints, like you said, the pillows. And I jacked that up at the beginning as well, because I was purchasing things for retail prices, right? So I got to figure out how to sell. Yeah, all of that. It was messy. I shifted then from doing 1 to 2 events. Then I got to a point where I was doing like 4 events in a month, which, guess what? Still realized I can't sustain that either.
And you were even producing your own events, right? So it was like you weren't even just vending, but you were actually producing your own showcases as well, which was super cool.
Thank you.
And I think what I enjoyed most about your showcases was that it allowed you to marry all that I am, all my passions, all my gifts, and my purpose, right? Because you can like something and then you can be purposed to do something, and you don't have to like it every single day. And like you said, there are days you're going to be tired and days you just don't feel like it, but so that who you are so embodies your purpose and just who you are,
right?
That it becomes seamless. It becomes valuable to people because you have something that no one else has. And when we figure out how to execute the thing in us that no one else has, exactly how it is in terms of where all the puzzle pieces match just perfectly, that is where we're in what I like to call a place of alignment, right?
Alignment.
And we see this word floating all over the internet. Everybody wants to talk about what this period of alignment is, but it's a little painful, right? Like everybody talks about like, this is glorious. We have arrived. We figured it out. But nobody talks about the sacrifice or the moments that you kind of have to engage in this thing that you may not feel so confident about, feel so good about, and something where there's just like the knowing inside of you that you need to do a thing, but the lack of confidence because it's like, well, what exactly am I doing? Right? So for me, I remember when I first came into this season where what I call the morning after, and I remember knowing that I needed to disconnect from everything that I had created on my own, everything that I assumed was real, and I needed to kind of relearn myself, and I needed to kind of, go on like this spiritual hiatus. I was just like, I can't, I gotta go. And I remember, similar to you, praying about it, meditating on it, and just saying, God, every time I put my hands on it, I mess it up. So, show me what I need to do. And it wasn't deep. And I just remember feeling certain about leaving, relocating. And I simply prayed. I said, God, just guide my search. Just guide me as I'm searching. Make it easy and make sure that I know that, that it's you. And I think people pray things like that all the time and think that there's this supernatural. Yeah, it ain't that, right? It ain't that. I was searching. I found something and I felt a peace. I didn't feel anxious about it. I didn't feel crazy about it. I was just like, okay, this is it. Like there was just a knowing. It was like what I call like your internal compass. But then there was me, the planner, saying, okay, I leave, and then what? And at the time that I made this step, I was in my 30s. So I'm like a full-fledged adult, with adult
Right.
responsibilities, real bills beyond my cell phone. That's like the part where I talk about like obedience, right? And we think about like when we're kids and our mother is like, you are not to do X, Y, and Z, and you obey or you don't, right? If you don't obey, you're on punishment. But then when it comes to alignment and you choose to defy the thing that you're supposed to do,
Right.
and the downward spiral that thing can take you on if you choose to go completely opposite, or you choose not to trust your internal compass or your higher power, or however people are walking life. I have seen what blatantly going the opposite direction of what you know to be real can do to you and to your life. And then even when you do obey, sometimes that process ain't pretty either, right? What did that look like for you? And did you know what you needed to do? Did you know what alignment looked like, or did you just feel it? Like, what was that like for you?
That's so loaded.
It definitely is.
So the reality is you are outside of obedience. It's not pretty, but it's also not pretty in obedience, right? And it's just different. There are different kinds of not being pretty. I'll answer it this way. Using your example of being a child, it's the child reaching for the stove and the parent saying, do not put your hand on the stove. And I think it's the same when it comes to obedience. Obedience is one of those all in kind of things, right? It's either I'm going to listen or I'm going to not. You can't partially obey. And so for me, definitely a feeling. For anybody that is trying to navigate faith in the world, it's a journey, right? Like you said, there's not this, opening of the sky. I didn't get an email from God, right? Like it didn't work that way. And so,
I love that. I didn't get an email from God. I love that.
I'm still waiting for one. But, faith doesn't operate the way that the world operates. It's, are you being still enough? Are you separating yourself? Are you going to the side to pay attention with that? Okay, I don't know what it is, but I know this ain't it, right? So I was familiar with that enough for me to know that I wasn't supposed to stay at my 9 to 5. But at the same time, it also was touch and go. Like it was a lot of like, okay, I feel like God told me to do this, and I will go running, and then I feel like I'd be like, man, but I'd be like, no, that wasn't it. My bad. Let me go back. Okay, wait, like even in terms of assignments, I feel like God gave me, I got stuff wrong. I did get pushback in the sense that people were like, how? Like, you're gonna put your faith, you're gonna put art, you're gonna dance, you're gonna write an all in one sitting. Yeah, actually, and we're gonna see what happens, because I knew that I couldn't leave faith out. And growing up in my faith life, I felt like there was always a level of sharing, do good. But because people were so sensitive, I would have to leave God out, even if I could be saying something directly from scripture, but I just wouldn't say that's where it came from for the sake of people's comfort levels. When it came to this in entrepreneurship, I was like, there's no way for me to be fully obedient, take this jump, go to where God is taking me, and not include God in it. So I had to be more sensitive, and I had to be honest about the fact that, again, there was no email. And people were like, oh, why don't you just do this? And I'm like, I'm waiting on God. And it was weird for people. And then again, we're not operating in the world system in the sense that things aren't going to happen traditionally. There is no traditional route of entrepreneurship. For many folks, you're creating your own lane. For many folks, it's your own connections and it's your own networking. And it, right? Like my very first art event, my aunt, she does event design. And so she made sure I didn't look janky and helping me get set up. It was a lot of experimentation. It was like, hey, Kwesi, I want to create a video that encompasses everything that I do. And hey, I want to sell my artwork and do this. And hey, I want it to be free for people though. And hey, like, how you have no money in your savings account, right?
Like, right.
How do you make this happen? But by the grace of God, again, it was the phone call didn't kill me. You missed your last 3 payments. No one is dead though. What you gonna do? Stop now? Well, you too far in now. So let me ask you this too. Talking about the feeling of obedience, how do they come to you as well? How have they come on this journey?
That's a great question. And for me, I would say when I relocated and I got still, everyone's having this reaction to the quarantine lifestyle and COVID. Well, I was on quarantine, in 2017.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with it. There's this beautiful space about being still enough to hear and to hear yourself. It's sort of why some people meditate, right? Some people pray, some people meditate, but prayer and meditation are two different things. Meditation allows you to be still enough to like receive something.
Yeah.
And when people pray, it's usually you talking and asking for things, right? So first of all, I was upstate New York in a very rural area where not only was you were lucky if there was like 1 in 10 for every Black person you saw in the town that I lived in, but it was so quiet. And I lived in a town where if you sat out on your front lawn after the rain, a deer would pass. So it was still, and I was alone. My family was, 200 miles away from me. And I had to make a decision to experience this solo. And in that space, I became quiet, still enough, and sensitive enough to know when I was getting like just the urge, like my internal compass really grew. And I became aware of when I was feeling that something needed to transpire, take place. And I did a lot of writing. And sometimes in that silence of writing and journaling and just being quiet and still, sometimes it would be, I would daydream, so to speak, and just a glimpse this thing or this event or this idea. Sometimes it's an idea, right? So, like innovation comes from here. If we think that somebody gave Steve Jobs a book and that is how Apple was developed, we are wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? There was a process in which every entrepreneur, every inventor, every innovator gets this moment of like, and moments of like receipt and direction and inspiration. And so for me, sometimes it could look like inspiration. Sometimes like I could literally just be watching something and you get this, I could be asleep or, laying down. And again, these moments of, what Oprah calls the aha moments, right? Those aha moments are not just ding, I've got an idea. You know what I mean? Sometimes they are moments of like revelation and moments of bravery and moments of just awareness that you come into. And so for me, they happen a few different ways, but they started to happen most when I decided to get quiet. My mother is a very busy person in lifestyle. And so I adapted that same lifestyle growing up.
Yeah.
Stay busy, keep moving, do this. Always trying to outdo myself. And not that anybody taught me to do that. That's just the way I was conditioned. And so something about being still where nothing else was going on. I didn't really have many friends. I went to work. I socialized with the people I worked with. And even for them, people were very much about like this wellness, work-life balance. So when when it was 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, people were going home to be with their families and to enjoy television, things that I knew nothing about being here in New York City. I was conditioned to the rat race of New York City is what I call it. So I think in that space, I allowed myself to just be more available to me and available to what was next for me. In that space, again, I also could not act as fast as I wanted to because being in that space, I didn't have the resources available to me that I would have had in New York City. I couldn't just jump and do that extra project because I didn't know anyone. So it's very hard to start things. And so I think that that's a really big part of the process too, in entrepreneurship is like, they say your network is your net worth. It's very difficult to build a brand and to build on an idea without connecting the dots and being connected to the right people at the right time to be able to, similarly to, although it was just your aunt, that's your network, right? Had she not been involved in your process, you might have been out here looking janky and you might have not been taken as seriously from the onset because, people vote with their feet, right? So if the presentation is not on par, especially within our culture, people are looking the other direction.
And I think what's really important for people to realize is that it's gonna feel different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Like but how beautiful it was to take the time to separate in that way, the way that you were able to receive and hear during, and I remember, I know that it wasn't easy, But and, by any means, process is so important. Like this idea of this overnight success is never real. It's a 10-year overnight success. It's all the things that you didn't get to see, and being able to witness, even at a distance, that journey, right? And you being so far away. But there are certain things that have evolved because of that season.
Absolutely. And I am immensely grateful. And I mean, and I'll close with this question.
Mm-hmm.
Would you change anything?
Everything. No, I'm kidding. My short answer, in all honesty, is no.
Same.
Only reason I say no is because of the information that I know now. I wouldn't gamble that. Like, I wouldn't play around with the purpose God placed inside of me. The things that I thought were my purpose were not my purpose. It would have been very easy for me to be like, painting, that's it, that's my purpose. It's not. It's my passion. It's a tool for me to fulfill my purpose.
Yep.
Right? Dance is a tool for me to serve the people. The workshops are tools for me to serve the people, because I need to get to somebody that hasn't felt my touch yet, or rather hasn't felt God's touch yet through me. Like, now that I realize that, I wouldn't change it. Yeah.
And this, my folks, is what I call the power of transition. This has been amazing. Definitely have to do it again. The morning after, y'all.
Bomb.com. You're amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.